The average modern city dweller is exposed to an estimated 3,000 to 5,000 advertising messages every single day. To cope with that volume, consumers actively filter it. They use DVRs to skip commercials, install ad blockers on their browsers, and tune out retail clutter. To understand why messages fail, we examine the macro model of communications. Here is a minimal scenario: a sender transmitting a clean, intended signal to a target receiver, but the space between them is filled with noise. Noise represents the random, competing messages that interfere with the signal before the receiver can properly decode it. Faced with this interference, companies simply try yelling louder by increasing their mass media budgets. That just adds more static to the environment. Breaking through requires abandoning isolated mass broadcasts and adopting a precise, coordinated system known as integrated marketing communications. A buyer does not passively absorb an advertisement and immediately execute a purchase. They respond to marketing through a specific psychological sequence. The micro-model of consumer responses divides the buyer's journey into 3 vertically stacked zones: cognitive for learning, affective for feeling, and behavioral for doing. These expand into a strict 6-stage funnel, moving linearly from awareness and knowledge to liking, preference, conviction, and purchase. Let's calculate the exact math of this conversion. Assume a highly optimistic 50% chance of moving a consumer successfully through each stage. At the funnel's top, probability degrades immediately. Half the audience is lost at awareness, and half drop out at knowledge. That mathematical drop-off compounds as the remaining consumers evaluate the brand. Only half of them will develop a liking for the product, and only half of those will actually prefer it over a competitor. By the time we calculate the joint probability across all 6 independent events, even with a 50% success rate at every step, the chance of a final purchase is exactly 1.5%. But 50% is a statistical fantasy. A much more realistic market success rate is about 10% per stage. Applying a 10% probability to each step, the chance of a successful consumer journey plummets. It drops to exactly 1 in 1 million. This exposes a massive flaw in general advertising. Spending millions of dollars on top-of-funnel creative is a total waste of capital if you do not diagnose the exact mathematical bottleneck where consumers are dropping out. Boosting the probability at a specific failing node requires engineering a precise message and creative strategy. If consumers are dropping out at the knowledge stage, marketers deploy informational appeals. These are strictly logical communications that elaborate on product attributes to solve a specific buyer problem. When Jockey recognized their target demographic, young women buying underwear for men, needed clear sizing and fit data, they engineered this retail display. The packaging uses clear photography and color-coded information to remove cognitive friction from the purchase decision. Alternatively, if the bottleneck occurs in the affective stages, brands use transformational appeals. These rely on non-product benefits and emotions to stir up purchase motivation. To make either appeal work, the message requires source credibility. Research shows this depends on 3 specific variables: the communicator's perceived expertise, trustworthiness, and likability. Brands often bypass the time it takes to build this credibility organically by utilizing recognizable figures. A well-chosen celebrity allows the company to borrow immediate equity and trust, the specific weakness in the consumer's response hierarchy. Yet, even the most perfectly engineered advertisement cannot force a consumer through all 6 stages on its own. To maintain momentum, marketers utilize the 8 major modes of the communications mix. This wheel includes advertising, sales promotion, public relations, mobile marketing, and personal selling. These modes are designed to interlock, weaving a complete net around the target demographic. When the Ocean Spray Cooperative faced a decade of declining sales, they utilized this 360-degree integration to bypass the static of standard grocery advertising. Instead of starting with TV spots, they built miniature cranberry bogs in the middle of Manhattan and Los Angeles. This physical, experiential PR stunt generated massive earned media to build top-of-funnel awareness and liking. They then paired that organic exposure with targeted direct consumer promotions and in-store displays and traditional broadcast advertising featuring actors waist-deep in the bogs. The integration yielded an average sales lift of 10% in its first 5 years, actively reversing the downward trend of the broader fruit juice category. By surrounding the consumer across multiple overlapping physical and digital touchpoints, the campaign artificially guided them down the hierarchy of effects. Building a net of that scale requires a communication audit, a comprehensive profile mapping every possible interaction a customer might have with the brand. That audit dictates the 8-step flowchart for effective communications. The process moves methodically from identifying the audience through channel selection to measuring results. A critical failure point here is establishing the budget. Many firms rely on the percentage of sales method, setting budgets based on past sales. This views sales as the cause of marketing rather than the result. A rigorous system overrides this with the objective and task method, where funding is dictated strictly by the cost of the actions required to move the consumer. Deploying that budget effectively demands that the marketer remain strictly media neutral. Media neutrality means evaluating every option based purely on efficiency. For Citibank in New York, sponsoring a massive fleet of blue rental bicycles was more efficient physical out-of-home media than standard billboards. Every channel, whether a television spot, a mobile app, or a bicycle, is evaluated ruthlessly on its standalone efficiency and its systemic ability to push the consumer to the next stage of conviction. Modern marketing relies very little on isolated creative guesswork. It operates as a highly engineered system of behavioral psychology, statistical probability, and continuous channel optimization.